Hey guys, I'm Dr. Walker. I just wanted to share a little bit about my heart behind why I got into the field of global health and HIV, the hope I see in this, and then the deep implications and impacts that we're feeling right now with the US cuts, and hopefully shed some light. I feel like news and media outlets are painting it in one direction or another, and I just wanted to come to you as a professional in the field and tell you how I'm feeling this and people around the world that I know are feeling these cuts. I typically work with women in HIV. That's really my heart. Women around the world who don't have a voice and who don't have a choice. And that often means meeting with women in the red light district who were forced into human trafficking, who ended up getting HIV because of that and aren't allowed back in their communities and aren't allowed back in society because of what's happened to them. And then they go on and have babies, and then their babies are born with HIV. And I also work with young teen girls in other countries who are forced to marry older men who can transmit the disease to them as well. And then the cycle goes on. It's really, the work that I do is horrific to see. It's so heartbreaking. And I do it because I see hope. I see hope in their stories. I see hope in what's happening in the field of HIV and how they can live normal lives. And that's why I do what I do. And I feel like women who are hurt and suppressed and just in awful situations, abused, they need somebody to fight for them. They need a voice. And so that's what I'm trying to do in my work. Did you know that if every person who had HIV was on medication, that they would become virally suppressed? And what that means in basic terms is the virus stops replicating in their body. So they still have HIV forever, but it doesn't get worse and they won't die from it. And they'll live a normal lifespan. And those are the incredible advances we've made with HIV medication. Another thing is that if a pregnant mom who has HIV is on medication, she won't transmit it to her baby. And if somebody's on medication, then they can't pass it to somebody else if they're virally suppressed. And so we've got researchers looking for cures and vaccines, and that's incredible and great, and I hope they find something. But we actually have tools right now with medication where if every person who had HIV was on medication, the disease would stop spreading and we could see it go away in our lifetime. And that's really, I honestly believe we could see that in our lifetime. But now I'm starting to question that with what's happening with PEPFAR and USAID and just the deep implications that these cuts have. And I just want to speak, PEPFAR is our HIV funding for around the world. And it's how we get people tested and on medication and in treatment so that they don't spread the disease to others and so that they can actually live a normal life. And what the US spends on this is, in USAID, is less than 1% of the US budget. So we're not talking like our country is going to go bankrupt because we're helping people with HIV and malaria and malnutrition. It's less than 1% of our budget. So let's make sure that that's clearly understood. And the implications of this are being felt so deeply. And something that it's breaking my heart is, PEPFAR came out of a unified political decision. So when President Bush was president, he came together with Clinton and they developed PEPFAR because both Democrats and Republicans sat at the table together, unified, saying it is not okay that people are dying from HIV and spreading the disease further and further and suffering just because they can't access medication. And so they came up with PEPFAR together, Democrats and Republicans. It was historical. I'm still amazed by it and so grateful for it. And USAID funds 2/3 of PEPFAR's funding. And so what we're seeing right now with these cuts is people are losing medications around the world just with these freezes and pauses. And then if USAID gets cut, I can't even fathom. And so if we look at Tanzania alone, 30 babies are being born a day with HIV because their moms stopped medication because they can't access because the US cut it off. So I'm just having trouble reconciling how somebody can say that they're against abortion and yet they're okay having babies be born with HIV because they pulled funding. Like, that doesn't equate in my mind because those babies are going to die and they're valuable. Their lives are meaningful. And we're just changing the trajectory of people's lives. There's about 15,000 people in Tanzania right now that can't access their HIV medication because the US pulled away funding from USAID and PEPFAR. 15,000. There's 600 kids, like we're talking children who obviously didn't choose to get HIV, who cannot access their medication because the US stopped funding. Their medication is sitting at the pharmacy, it's available, but they can't afford it because they were getting it through USAID and PEPFAR. And to me, that's not okay. It's not okay to inflict suffering on people because we want to pull out less than 1% of our giving that we use to help people because we're a wealthy country. We should be helping more. I can't even believe that we're not helping more than 1%, right? It doesn't make sense to me. So it just feels like an injustice to me to see the people that I work with who've been trafficked, who have been raped, who have been abused, who have been forced into marriage, like all these women that I work with who now cannot access HIV medication and then pass it on if they're pregnant. I cannot fathom this world. And it just feels like such an injustice. And what I think is happening is that we're not seeing these stories. We're not talking about these hardships because we're hearing the narrative that we're looking for corruption or we're saving money or whatever the narrative is. I don't know. But I just know that when we hear numbers and we just turn it into money, we miss people. We miss people in the process. And these are real lives, real people that are being changed forever. And it's not just going to change their lives, it's going to change just a number of countries, because if HIV starts spreading, disease doesn't see borders, right? And so disease will continue to spread and we'll continue to see it grow around the world. And we have made such progress in the last 30 years that I cannot imagine if that's going away because more and more people are being infected. And so I just urge you to remember that there are real people behind these numbers. There are just real people suffering. And I just urge you to advocate for global health funding and to really look at the impact of PEPFAR and USAID, regardless of what the news medias are saying, and just really understand that there are people deeply being impacted today by what's happening.